I woke to the sound of nothing, not silence, but a deeper kind of stillness, the kind that made you aware of every breath you took, as though the world were holding its own. Siomaras? When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my cottage anymore. The last thing I remembered was the storm. The roof had rattled, the window panes had screamed, and I'd blown out the last candle on my bedside table. I'd been thinking about how small I was in the vastness of it all. One mortal heart beating against thunder, and then there had been light. A strange, silver light that had bled through the cracks of the world and pulled me under, perpeti. Now, that light was everywhere. I was lying on a floor that shimmered like glass but felt warm beneath my palms. Mist curled around my fingers alive, almost, and when I looked up, I saw a ceiling made of moonlight. Pillars of silver stone rose high into a sky that wasn't quite a sky at all, but a reflection of one. Every inch of the air glowed softly, like the inside of a dream I wasn't meant to see. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I was afraid that if I did, the illusion would shatter and I'd wake up again back in my little cottage, with its leaky roof and my life that had never been meant for anything more. But the air here smelled real, cool, sharp, tinged with the faintest trace of frost and something older, something like memory. Then I heard footsteps. Figures moved through the mist. Not people exactly, but outlines of them. Their forms glimmered as though carved from starlight, their eyes glowing faintly blue. They wore long, flowing robes that looked spun from the same material as the fog beneath their feet. When they saw me, they stopped. Whispered words passed between them, soft and reverent. "The dreamer's chosen," one said. "The mortal," another murmured. "He summoned her." I tried to speak to ask who he was, but my voice came out like a breath against water, thin and uncertain. Still, the sound seemed to ripple through the air, echoing farther than it should have. The mists themselves stirred, responding like a creature that had just been awakened. One of the figures approached a woman, judging by her shape. Her face was half veiled by gauze, her eyes kind but watchful. "You should not be here, mortal child," she said, her voice low, musical, ancient. "Yet the Alpha King wills it so." "The Alpha King?" I echoed, my pulse quickening. "What is this place?" She tilted her head slightly. "Samnara," she said simply. "The realm of sleep, the kingdom between life and shadow. You walk in the dream of the one who is not woken for 1,000 moons, class, and time." My heart stumbled. "You mean, I'm dreaming?" A faint smile ghosted across her lips. "If that comforts you, yes, but dreams have rules, and this one has a king." She gestured for me to follow, and though every part of me screamed to run, I did. The mist parted before her as she walked, revealing corridors of pale marble veined with silver, tapestries that shimmered like moving water, and doors that opened soundlessly at her approach. As we moved, whispers trailed after us. Courtiers, if that's what they were, bowed their heads as we passed. I caught fragments of words: the chosen, the mortal bride, the prophecy fulfilled. By the time we entered the great hall, my skin was cold with unease. The chamber stretched endlessly, lit by 1,000 floating orbs of light. At its center stood a throne carved from obsidian, roots of dark crystal twisting down its steps like frozen vines. Upon it sat a man motionless, magnificent, terrifying in his stillness. His hair spilled like ink over armor that shimmered with faint lunar light. His crown seemed forged from fragments of night itself. And though he didn't move, I felt him an energy thrumming through the air, vast and ancient, as though the entire realm pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "The Alpha King," the veiled woman whispered. "Kaelin Draven, ruler of Samnara, the dreamer who cannot wake." I stepped closer before I could stop myself. There was something magnetic about him, something that made the air thinner, the world sharper. His face was flawless, sculpted in sorrow, and though his eyes were closed, his brow was furrowed, as if some part of him still fought unseen battles. He breathes, I whispered. He dreams, the woman corrected. And while he dreams, Somnara endures. If he wakes, it ends. I stared at him, this king trapped in his own eternity. And then, without thinking, I spoke just one word, barely audible. Kalen. The moment his name left my lips, the entire hall trembled. The mist recoiled, the light dimmed, and his fingers twitched against the armrest. Gasps rippled through the courtiers. The veiled woman's eyes widened. Beneath his closed lids, his eyes moved. And I swear, I heard it, a sound, like a sigh escaping from a dream too long kept. My name, carried back to me on the breath of a sleeping god. Power. Ilara, they told me the Alpha King never stirred. Not when storms raged beyond Somnara's horizon. Not when dream spirits clawed at the palace gates. Not even when the moon itself vanished from the sky for 3 nights straight. But he moved when I spoke. I didn't notice it the first time. It was a whisper, almost nothing, the faintest flicker beneath his closed eyelids. When I asked, "Can you hear me?" The courtiers gasped. The mist shifted. And somewhere in the great hall, a torch that had burned blue for centuries flared white. Power story. By the second time, I knew it wasn't chance. Every syllable I spoke, every question, every breath made the air tremble as though the dream itself leaned closer to listen. His fingers twitched again. His chest rose higher with each word. The court of Somnara began to murmur that the mortal's voice carried the sound of the waking world, a resonance that did not belong here. The dream mages came the next morning. They appeared at my door in a hush of pale robes, faces hidden behind veils, embroidered with silver sigils that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. The oldest among them, Lady Vera, the one with a voice like falling snow, studied me for a long time before speaking. "You have been called across the veil," she said. "It is not by accident." "I don't understand," I admitted. "Why me? Why would a king's dream pull in someone like me, someone ordinary?" Her eyes, sharp and ancient, glinted behind the veil. "Ordinary things are often keys to locked doors, but not all doors should open." I frowned. "You think I could wake him?" Vera's silence was answer enough. Then she stepped closer. I could see faint runes shimmering across her palms, protective sigils that flickered like candlelight. "You must not speak to him again, mortal. His mind is fragile, and this realm depends upon it. If he wakes before the curse is broken, the dream will collapse and both of you will fall with it." I remember the chill that followed those words, sharp as the air before lightning. "What do you mean, both of us?" Vera's gaze did not waver. "You are bound now. The dream recognizes your soul. You are his anchor and his undoing." After they left, I sat by the window of the guest chamber they'd given me, if it could be called that. The view opened not to a landscape but to an ocean of clouds, silver and slow-moving, stretching into forever. I could see shapes forming and dissolving within it, wolves running, trees blooming and vanishing, stars falling upward. Somnara was beautiful, but beauty here had an edge. It didn't feel alive. It felt suspended, like a painting that had forgotten how to dry. I thought of my cottage then, of rain against the roof, of dirt beneath my nails from the garden I'd tended. I wondered if any of that was real anymore, but his face kept pulling me back. The way his expression wasn't peaceful, even in sleep. The furrow in his brow, the faint tension in his jaw, like someone fighting an endless battle behind closed eyes. And God's help me, I wanted to ease it. So that night, when the halls fell silent and the mist dimmed to a whisper, I went back to the throne room, alone. The torches flickered low, painting the air in soft silver. I walked until I stood before him, the Alpha King of Somnara, the dreamer who'd ruled for 1,000 moons without opening his eyes. "I don't know what you want from me," I whispered. My voice sounded too small in that vast hall. "But if my words can reach you, maybe you don't have to be alone." I didn't plan to sing. It just happened, a tune I barely remembered. Something my mother used to hum when I couldn't sleep. Simple, human, fragile. The moment the melody left my lips, the air changed. The mist coiled upward, glowing faintly gold instead of silver. The pillars shimmered like water. I heard a heartbeat echo through the hall, deep, slow, and growing faster. Kalen's. I froze mid-note, my chest tight, his head tilted slightly toward me, almost imperceptibly. The wolves carved into the marble floor, lifted their heads, eyes glowing faintly blue. I should have stopped. I should have listened to Vera. But the sight of him so near to life, so achingly human beneath the myth, broke something inside me. So I kept singing. With each line, his breath deepened. The entire hall pulsed in time with the rhythm of his heart. The torches flared to brilliant white. The mists retreated from the walls as though bowing before him. And then silence. The moment the last note faded, the world held its breath. Then he spoke. It was faint at first, like the echo of wind across a canyon, yet it carried through the realm as though thunder had been born inside the dream itself. Alara. My name. Spoken by a man who hadn't breathed a word in 1,000 years. The floor trembled beneath my feet. Cracks of light split across the marble, racing up the columns and spilling into the mist. The torches shattered, scattering sparks like falling stars. Somewhere far off, I heard the mages shouting spells to contain the breach, but it was too late. The dream was already quaking. And through the chaos, I could still hear it, that single word, my name echoing from his lips like a vow whispered between worlds. Alara. Dreams within dreams are different here. They don't come softly, like they used to when I was mortal. They arrive like waves breaking through glass, too bright, too real, pulling me somewhere I shouldn't be. That night, after Kalen spoke my name for the first time, I fell asleep in Somnara and woke up again, somewhere else. I stood in a field made of glass. Every blade shimmered, fragile as frost, yet didn't break beneath my bare feet. Beneath the surface, light moved, not sunlight, but moonlight, caught in motion, swirling in currents like water. The air was thin, shimmering with a faint hum, and far away I could see the outline of the palace, distorted like a reflection seen through tears. And there he was. Kalen walked ahead of me, barefoot, the hem of his dark coat brushing the translucent ground. His movements were slower here, unguarded, almost human. The crown was gone. The armor, too. He looked younger, tired. His expression was that of a man who had forgotten what peace felt like but was trying to remember. I didn't call his name at first. I was afraid. Not of him, never of him, but of what would happen if he realized I shouldn't be here. The mages said my voice could wake him. I couldn't risk breaking what little remained of this fragile world. Then, without looking at me, he spoke. You shouldn't be here. His voice wasn't the echo I'd heard in the throne room. It was clear, deep, and impossibly sad. The dream doesn't bring me visitors anymore. My throat tightened. Then maybe I'm not a visitor. He turned, and when his eyes met mine, I forgot how to breathe. They weren't glowing or cold or divine as I'd imagined. They were simply tired. Silver gray, the color of storm clouds before rain. You're not real, he said quietly. You're what's left of my hope. The dream makes you from the memory of a voice I once heard long ago. I took a hesitant step closer. What if you're the one who's dreaming of me? He smiled, faintly. I've heard that before in the early days. My seer told me every dreamer says that before they fade. I'm not fading. You will. His tone wasn't cruel, just certain, the voice of someone who'd watched too many things disappear. We stood in silence for a while. The glass field rippled beneath us like a living sea, reflecting fragments of both our faces, overlapping until I couldn't tell where I ended, and he began. Why are you here? I asked. His jaw tightened. Punishment. For what? He hesitated, gaze drifting to the horizon where the mist thickened. For killing my brother. The words hit the air like shattering crystal. I didn't mean to. He continued softly, almost to himself. We fought beneath the blood moon, both of us heirs, both of us fools. He wanted the throne. I wanted peace. The goddess promised she'd bless the victor. She didn't say she'd curse the survivor. He looked down at his hands as if they still carried blood, power. When I struck him, I felt something tear. The moon went dark. My pack fell silent. And when I woke, I wasn't awake. The goddess locked me here in my own mind, in my own regret. She said I would sleep until I understood what it meant to take life from love. She said I would sleep until I understood what it meant to take life from love. My chest ached. And your brother? He laughed once bitterly. He walks beyond the veil, his spirit the only thing that still visits me in nightmares. He stands just out of reach, reminding me what I destroyed. Without thinking, I reached for him. My hand brushed his arm, and for an instant, warmth flooded between us, a spark of something that felt like forgiveness waiting to be spoken. His eyes flickered in surprise, as though he'd felt it too. "You shouldn't touch me," he murmured. "The dream bends around contact. It'll remember what it's not supposed to, pry it." But I didn't pull away. Maybe it needs to remember. He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, softly, almost reverently, he said, "You feel real." "I am real." He shook his head, but his voice trembled. "If that were true, I'd wake." The horizon darkened. The mist began to churn, pulling at the edges of the field. Kalen's figure wavered like a reflection in water. I tried to hold on, but the ground beneath me fractured, lines of light spreading outward like cracks in a mirror. "Kalen," I began, but he was already fading. He reached out one last time. His fingertips grazed my cheek, light as air. "If you are real," he whispered, "then please, forgive me." The world shattered. I gasped awake in my chamber, drenched in cold sweat. The air smelled of iron and smoke, prize. For a heartbeat, I thought it was still the dream, until I saw the wall opposite me, split clean through by a glowing fissure. Outside my window, the silver mist that had always floated still and perfect now swirled violently, bleeding streaks of black into the light. The palace trembled beneath me, paintings sliding off walls, mirrors cracking one by one. I stumbled to the corridor. Servants of mist ran past, their forms flickering like dying candles. Somewhere far below, I heard the faint toll of a bell, one that had never rung in this timeless realm. The dream was breaking, and deep within the trembling palace, I could feel it again, that same heartbeat from before, now faster, stronger, echoing through every wall and floor and breath. Kalen's. He was trying to wake. The palace didn't stop trembling for 3 days. Mirrors cracked, corridors bled light, and the mists that once glided like silk across the marble floors began to behave like smoke, restless, dark-edged, alive. The servants whispered that the dream was thinning, that the king's pulse had grown too strong for the realm to contain, and everyone knew who had caused it: me. By the third dawn, the dream mages came for me again, this time without ceremony. They didn't bow. They didn't whisper. They simply took me by the wrists and led me down the endless corridors toward the inner sanctum, where the high dream mage waited, Lady Vera. She stood before a great mirror that showed no reflection, only ripples of light moving like breath across water. Her veil had been replaced by a circlet of woven crystal that glowed faintly blue, and her expression, what I could see of it, was no longer kind. "You've disturbed the balance," she said before I could speak. "Do you know what you've done, mortal?" I only spoke. I said, though my voice was small, the words trembling against the air. He heard me, precisely. Her tone was sharp, but beneath it there was something almost like pity. "And that is the danger. And that is the danger." She motioned for me to look into the mirror. I did and saw the throne room, Kalen still sitting motionless, the cracks of light that had spread from his dais, glowing like open wounds in the floor. "The realm of Somnara," Vera said softly, "exists because he dreams it, Every cloud, every breath, every star suspended in this sky, all of it is drawn from his mind. He sustains it with his guilt, with the weight of his sin. Without that guilt, without that sleep, this world ceases. Her words sank in like ice. You mean, if he wakes, Somnara dies. The mirror pulsed once, the image flickering. I saw flashes. The crystal fields I'd walked through with him. The wolves carved in the floor dissolving into mist. Entire hallways flickering like dying stars. I took a step back. And me? Vera's eyes met mine. You were summoned by his subconscious, drawn across the veil, because your voice resonates with his. You are tethered to his dreaming mind. If it unravels, so do you. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. So if I wake him, you vanish with the realm. The room spun. But if I don't, then you remain, she said, but only as long as he sleeps, and you will watch him forever unchanging, unreachable. His lips will never speak, his eyes will never open, and you will never truly live. Her words fell like stones into my chest. There was no winning. Either I saved him and died, or lived and lost him. Pie. Vera must have seen the despair in my face, because her tone softened slightly. There are those who call this mercy. The goddess did not destroy him. She imprisoned him in his own regret, where he could do no more harm. That isn't mercy, I said quietly. It's cruelty disguised as penance. Perhaps, she murmured, but it keeps our world intact. Her hands lifted, and the mirror shimmered again. This time it showed Kaelin in profile still as stone, yet somehow aware. The faintest tremor of breath, the way his fingers curled slightly inward, as though holding on to something unseen. His curse, Vera said, was born from the moment he killed his brother. The goddess told him he would never wake until he forgave himself something he is incapable of. You, mortal, are the first disturbance in centuries. The first reminder that he still has a heart. I swallowed hard. What do you expect me to do? Stay away, she said simply. Do not speak to him. Do not sing. Do not even stand near his throne. If you care for him, let him sleep. The moment his soul stirs again, this world begins to die. I left the sanctum in silence, but her warning followed me down every corridor. It settled in my lungs, in my blood, in the weight of my footsteps. If you care for him, let him sleep. I tried. I truly did. For days I kept away from the throne room. I stayed in the high towers, watching the realm from windows that overlooked oceans of mist and mountains that weren't real. Yet even there, I could feel him. The pulse of his dream ran through everything, the tremor in the marble, the rhythm of the light. And sometimes, when the air was very still, I could hear it, a faint echo of my own name carried on the wind. Elara. Always that voice. Distant, soft, calling me from somewhere I couldn't go. That night, I dreamed again, or perhaps Somnara dreamed me. I stood not in a field of glass this time, but in my own mortal home, my little cottage, the one I hadn't seen since the storm that brought me here. Rain tapped gently on the window. The air smelled of earth and smoke. I thought I was alone until I saw him standing in the doorway, Kaelin. Not in armor, not as a king, just a man. Barefoot, drenched in shadow. His eyes were gentler here, stripped of the cold light they carried in Somnara. You shouldn't be here, I whispered. He stepped closer. The floor didn't creak beneath his feet. Maybe not, but neither should you. I tried to move, but couldn't. The dream felt heavier than before, like gravity itself had found me. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Vera's warning, he said quietly. She told you the truth. I nodded, unable to speak. His gaze held mine, steady, unflinching. Then you understand the cost. Tears stung my eyes. If I wake you, everything ends. Yes, his voice was low, sorrowful. But eternity without you isn't living, Elara. It's just another kind of death. And the world flickered, walls turning to light, rain turning to ash. His outline began to fade. Kalen, stop. He smiled, just barely, even as the dream dissolved around us. I'd rather lose eternity than live without you. And then he was gone. I woke, gasping, clutching the sheets as the first cracks of dawn broke through the mist, and somewhere in the depths of the palace, I heard the faint sound of stone splitting again. The dream was dying. I used to think dreams were an escape. Now I know they can be prisons, silken, luminous, and utterly merciless. For days after Kalen's words, I'd rather lose eternity than live without you. The world of Samnara felt strange, fragile. The light dimmed differently, as if the realm itself had begun to question whether it still wanted to exist. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt something tugging at the edges of my mind, a pull not toward rest, but remembrance. It began with a sound, a low, steady rhythm that didn't belong to this place, mechanical, sterile, and heartbreakingly human. I didn't recognize it at first. Then, slowly, I realized it was a heartbeat monitor. Beep, beep, beep. The sound threaded itself into my dreams, like a whisper from another life. I followed it through the marble corridors that now flickered like film about to burn, through the mist that carried the scent of antiseptic instead of rain. And suddenly, I was standing in a white room. Fluorescent lights hummed above. Machines blinked at my side. A frail body lay on the bed, my body, tubes in the arm, skin pale, lips parted in a half-breath. The figure looked peaceful, but not alive. A nurse's voice echoed faintly through the door. She's been like this for weeks. We're losing her. I reached out, trembling. My fingers passed through the bedrail as though through smoke. So that was it. I wasn't just a visitor in Samnara. I was dying in the waking world. The realization struck hard, not as fear, but as a kind of weary clarity. I'd thought the storm that night had ended with sleep. But sleep hadn't been rest, it had been a crossing. My heart had stopped somewhere between one world and the next, and this dream had taken me in like a tide that refuses to let go of what it finds. I heard another sound, then softer, deeper, older than the beeping machines, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Kalen. When I turned, he stood beside me, the same dark hair, the same mournful silver eyes, but here, in this sterile light, his presence made no sense. The dream didn't belong here, and yet he seemed at ease. "This is where you came from," he said quietly, his voice low enough that it seemed to vibrate inside me. "Your body calls to you, even as your soul drifts." My throat tightened. "Then I can go back?" "You could," he said, "but not without tearing the veil between our worlds. And if you return?" He trailed off, his gaze heavy with meaning. "I'll vanish," I whispered. "Yes." We stood in silence, surrounded by the soft hum of machines and the faint scent of fading lilies on the bedside table. My mortal self, the one who had once fretted about bills and rain and small, human heartbreaks, lay a breath away. And yet, I couldn't reach her. Kalen's hand brushed mine, warm and solid, the only real thing in a place that wasn't supposed to have him. "I remember now," I said, the words coming like fragments of a forgotten prayer. "The storm. I fell asleep and didn't wake up. My heart failed." He didn't flinch. "Your heart brought you here. That's not life, Kalen. This isn't real." He looked around the hospital room, the flickering monitors, the unmoving body, and yet, neither is that. There was something almost cruel in the truth of it, both worlds demanding loyalty, neither one promising peace. "I don't belong in your dream," I said softly. His eyes darkened. "You think this is my dream?" "It has to be," I said. "Samnara exists because you're asleep." He stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat of him through the cold air. "Then tell me why you bleed when I hurt, why your heart beats in time with mine, why you are the only thing in this endless slumber that feels alive." My breath caught. Because you made me that way. Or because you made me remember what it means to live. He lifted his hand then, and something shone between his fingers, a ring unlike any I'd ever seen. It wasn't metal, or jewel, or stone. It was light, a soft silver band that pulsed like a heartbeat, woven from the glow of the moon itself. "I've given this ring before," he said quietly, eyes fixed on it. "Once long ago, to my brother's betrothed. The night I took his life, I swore I'd never bind another soul again. Powers." He looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw him not as the Alpha King, not as the dreamer, but as a man burdened by too many centuries of silence. "Take it," he said. "It's not a crown or a vow. It's a promise that if you leave this place, I will find you, even if I must follow you into death." The ring hovered above his palm, its light trembling like a living thing. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "You'll destroy everything. Samnara, your people. They were never real," he said, his voice breaking. "They are fragments of my guilt, born to keep me asleep. You are the only truth this dream ever gave me." The ring flared brighter. I felt its warmth spill into my chest, into both of me, the dreamer and the dying woman. The line between the two blurred until I couldn't tell which one was real anymore. "Kalen." His fingers brushed mine as he placed the ring in my palm. "Then choose," he whispered. "Stay and fade with me, or wake, and I will follow." The light surged, flooding the room. My mortal heart stuttered a single skipped beat, a static gasp on the monitor. And through it all, I heard him one last time, voice steady, even as the world began to fracture around us. "If death is the price of love, then I will pay it." The monitor screamed one long, continuous tone, and the dream dissolved into white. Dreams aren't supposed to bleed. But Samnara was bleeding. The first sign came with the color of the sky. It used to be silver, pale, quiet, endless. Now it flickered, streaked with veins of red and black, as though something beneath its surface was clawing to escape. The palace trembled constantly. Corridors shifted without sound. Mirrors wept light. The air itself began to crackle with the weight of something breaking, not just magic, but memory. Lady Vera said the dream was unraveling. I could see it. The marble floors now pulsed with light that looked like veins. The paintings that once told Kalen's story, the battles, the coronation, the blood moon, now warped and distorted. His brother's face in the murals began to move, eyes following me down the hall. In the courtyards, the flowers burned white-hot before turning to ash. And through it all, I felt Kalen's heartbeat growing stronger. Every pulse echoed through the realm like a drum. It was as if his soul was fighting to wake, clawing toward life. But with every thrum, Samnara's edges came apart a little more. By the time I reached the throne room, the walls were breathing. The air shimmered with fractures of light, and I could see glimpses of other places inside them, fragments of his memories. A battlefield soaked in rain. A hand holding a blood-stained crown. The moment his sword pierced his brother's chest, the dream was collapsing under its own guilt. Kalen sat where he always had, still and perfect, but no longer peaceful. His head tilted slightly to one side, his hands gripping the throne so tightly that cracks spidered through the obsidian. His brow furrowed, as if he were enduring pain, too great to name. And though his eyes were still closed, his lips moved soundlessly, shaping words I couldn't hear. I ran to him. "Kalen," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You have to stop. You're tearing yourself apart." He didn't move. But the air around him shuddered. The light from the fractured windows shifted, scattering across his armor. For the first time, I noticed that the edges of his crown had begun to fade, not into light, but into shadow. Lady Vera's words haunted me. "If you care for him, let him sleep." Power. But how could I, when every tremor of his realm screamed in agony? How could I watch him suffer in silence, bound to a nightmare that devoured itself every time he remembered? I reached out. My fingers brushed his hand cold, rigid, carved of something too ancient to be flesh, and then warmth burst through me. It wasn't gentle. It was violent, like the pull of a tide against my soul. My knees buckled as the energy tore through my arm, my breath catching in my throat. I could feel my heartbeat stutter once, twice before finding his rhythm. It was as though our hearts were trying to sync, but every beat that steadied his made mine weaker. The light from the cracks in the wall brightened, burning white. The dream pulsed in time with us, one heartbeat, two lives intertwined. "Kaylin," I gasped. "Please, stop." He didn't hear me, or maybe he did, but couldn't answer. His grip loosened slightly, his fingers curling around mine, and the moment he did, the energy doubled. My vision blurred, the room tilted. I could feel him drinking in my life, not cruelly, not by choice, but as if the dream itself demanded it. The mists howled, the torches shattered. The sky outside split open, revealing flashes of his memories. Kaylin as a boy, kneeling beside his brother. Kaylin on a battlefield, covered in blood. Kaylin standing before the goddess, begging for forgiveness. Each image tore through me, burning behind my eyes. I tried to pull away, but his hand tightened around mine, not in dominance, but desperation. The moment I met his gaze, those closed eyes beneath heavy lashes trembling, I understood. He wasn't fighting to wake for power or freedom. He was fighting for me. Love in this realm wasn't soft. It was sacrificial, sharp, and consuming. And I was being consumed. My breath came shallow. My skin glowed faintly, that same silver light I'd seen in his crown. It leaked from my fingertips, spreading across our joined hands until it ran into his veins. His color changed from pale stillness to something warm, alive. He was stealing my life to awaken. And I let him. The palace screamed around us. The cracks in the walls widened, revealing nothingness, the void beneath the dream. Vera's voice echoed faintly in the distance, shouting words of warning I could barely hear. But I couldn't stop. If my life could give him even one heartbeat of freedom, I would give it. "Kaylin," I whispered again, voice breaking. "Come back to me." A single tear slid down his cheek, and then his eyes opened. Not the pale gray I remembered, but molten silver, blinding, alive. They locked onto mine, wide with recognition, with terror, with love. The connection between us snapped like a lightning strike, throwing me backward. I hit the floor, breathless, my hand still glowing where he'd touched me. He was awake. The throne behind him split clean in two. Light burst from the fractures, flooding the hall. The dream quaked beneath us. Mists rose like storms, swallowing the corridors, devouring the air. He stumbled forward, reaching for me, his voice raw and ragged, the first sound he'd made as a waking man. "Elara." And then the world broke open, the walls dissolved into streams of light. The marble turned to dust beneath our feet. Every dream, every memory, every echo of Samnara's beauty collapsed inward like a dying star. As the light swallowed us both, I saw the truth of it. His awakening wasn't salvation. It was the end of everything that had ever loved him enough to keep him sleeping. And then, there was nothing but white. When Kaylin opened his eyes, the world screamed. It wasn't a sound the ear could catch. It was deeper, older, made of every broken memory the dream had ever swallowed. The walls shuddered, the sky cracked open, and the air itself splintered into pieces of light. He gasped once, sharply, as if pulling in his first breath in centuries, and then silence. A silence that wasn't peace, but fear holding its breath. I was on the floor, weak and trembling. My skin still shimmered faintly from the light he had taken from me. The marble beneath me had turned translucent. I could see shadows of running wolves trapped beneath its surface, pounding against the glass like ghosts desperate to be freed. Kaylin stood over me, unsteady, alive. His crown had vanished. The obsidian armor that once gleamed like night was fractured, pieces falling away into ash. His hair fell in tangled strands around his face, And his eyes. God's. His eyes were the storm itself, not silver anymore, but molten, as if they carried the moon and fire both. Elara, he breathed, my name breaking apart in his mouth like a prayer he didn't know he'd been holding for centuries. I tried to rise, but my knees gave out. The world felt thinner, weaker. The dream no longer obeyed the rules that had once bound it. You shouldn't be awake, I whispered. You weren't meant to. I know. He looked around at the trembling walls, the bleeding sky. I can feel the realm fighting me. It doesn't want me here anymore. As if to prove his words, the palace convulsed. The windows shattered inward, spilling not glass but fragments of memory images flickering in the air like dying candles. Kalen is a boy chasing his brother through sunlit fields, his mother's hand brushing his hair from his face, his sword raised against blood. The dream was coming undone, memory by memory, and then the spirits came. They rose from the mists, shapes made of smoke and grief, faces half-formed from Kalen's past. His soldiers, his slain, his brother. Their mouths opened, but their words were only screams. They're his creations, I said, backing toward him. They think he's their god, and they think he's killing them. Kalen's jaw tightened. They're right. One spirit lunged the outline of a wolf, its eyes hollow and burning blue. Kalen's hand lifted on instinct, and a pulse of light threw it back, dissolving it into dust. But for every one that fell, 3 more rose. He reached for me, pulling me behind him. Don't look at them, he said. They feed on recognition. Kalen, stop, you can't fight them all. I won't go back. His voice deepened, carrying the weight of something ancient. Do you understand me, Elara? I will not sleep again. You'll die, I said. The dream can't hold you. Then let it break. The spirits screamed louder. The floor beneath us cracked wide, showing nothing beneath it, just endless white. Whole towers began to crumble into the void. The throne split apart completely, disintegrating into dust. Kalen's strength faltered for the first time. He staggered, clutching his head, eyes glowing with pain. It's collapsing inside me. I can feel it, the centuries, the guilt they're unraveling too fast. I caught him as he fell to one knee, my hands gripping his shoulders. His body burned with energy, too much for one being to hold. It felt like trying to touch lightning. Kalen, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. You have to rest. He shook his head. If I sleep again, I lose you. You'll fade when the dream resets. I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you. The spirits circled us, the mists closing in like walls. Somewhere above the chaos, I saw Lady Vera appear standing on the crumbling stairway, her veil torn, her hair loose for the first time. She looked both furious and afraid. This must end, she shouted over the noise. He was never meant to wake. Kalen's head snapped toward her. You would have kept me prisoner forever? You are the prison, she cried. Somnara is built from your mind. Every breath, every dream, they exist because of you. If you leave, there is no realm left to rule. I never wanted to rule, he roared. The sound shook the ground beneath us. Vera turned to me, her eyes desperate now. Elara, listen to me. The choice isn't his, it's yours. My heart stopped. Mine? You're the anchor, she said, voice trembling. He's tethered to this world through you. You can call him back to sleep, seal the curse again, and save what's left of Somnara. Or, you can let him wake fully and watch it all burn. Kalen's hand gripped mine, his touch feverish. Don't let them chain me again. Don't let them erase you. I will not wake to a world without you in it. Please, Vera begged. If he stays awake, both of you will perish. Everything he ever created will vanish. I could barely breathe. My body was still faintly glowing from where his power had touched me. Around us, the palace continued to fall, staircases disintegrating midair, windows collapsing into the void. The spirits screamed louder, trapped between existence and oblivion. Kalen looked at me, and for a moment, The chaos fell away. There was only him, his trembling hand in mine, his gaze filled with defiance and something softer, something unbearably human. "I would rather die as a man with you," he said, voice breaking, "than live 1,000 years as a god without you." Vera's voice cut through the storm. "Choose, Alara." The ground gave way beneath my feet. The light swallowed the throne, the sky, everything. I felt the pull of two worlds tearing at me, one begging for mercy, the other begging for love. And as the last fragment of the dream began to dissolve, I whispered the only word that mattered, but the wind carried it away before even I could hear which choice I'd made. They say the soul has weight, that it can be measured in the moment between life and death, but what they never tell you is how it feels when yours begins to divide. My body was splitting in two. One half clung to Samnara, to Kalen's trembling hand, to the shards of light that used to be a kingdom. The other half drifted somewhere colder, sharper, where machines whispered and my mortal heart struggled to remember its rhythm. Every beat felt weaker, fainter, fading beneath layers of dream. I could hear both worlds. The wind of the collapsing realm screamed in one ear, while the echo of a heart monitor beeped faintly in the other. Between them, my name whispered in a voice that was neither here nor there, bound me to the edge of both. "Alara," Kalen's voice, rough, desperate, breaking against the wind. I forced my eyes open. We were standing in the ruins of what had been the throne room, now nothing more than fractured sky and streams of silver light. His arms were around me, steady though his body trembled with exhaustion. Everything he had built, every memory he had endured was crumbling into stardust. "Stay with me," he said. His voice was thick with something I had never heard from him before: fear. "Please, Alara, don't fade yet." I wanted to tell him I was trying, that I had no intention of leaving him in this collapsing eternity. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came. My voice, the one that had once awakened him, was gone, pressed his forehead against mine, breathing raggedly. "The bridge," he whispered. "There's still one way left." Before I could ask, he lifted me into his arms. His strength was waning. I could feel the tremor in his muscles, the shudder in his breath, yet he carried me as though I weighed nothing. The light around us shifted, forming a faint path stretching into the distance, the mirror pool. It lay beyond the ruins, a vast, shimmering lake of glass that reflected not what was before it, but what was possible. Power. It was said to be the last passage between the mortal realm and Samnara, the seam where waking and dreaming touched. As he carried me closer, I saw my reflection rippling across its surface, or rather, two reflections. One was the Alara of this realm, pale and faintly luminous. The other was the fragile mortal I had glimpsed in that hospital room, eyes closed, skin waxen and fading. Both were me. Neither were whole. Kalen knelt by the edge of the pool, his chest heaving. The air around us pulsed with unstable energy, each breath shaking the ground beneath his knees. "This is it," he said softly. "The bridge between worlds." His voice cracked. "If we cross, we can merge them, the mortal and the dream. You'll live again." I looked up at him, my vision blurring. "And you?" His silence told me everything. "The bridge demands balance," he said finally. "A life for a life. For you to return, something must stay behind." I tried to move, to protest, but my limbs felt like mist. "Kalen, no." He smiled faintly, a sadness woven through it. "You were never meant to die here, Alara. You were meant to wake." The wind rose around us, carrying whispers, the voices of his realm, his creations, his memories. I could feel them pleading with him, pulling him back, begging their king not to abandon them. But he didn't look away from me. "Potter. I've spent centuries sleeping," he said, his voice low and steady, even as the sky above us fractured into threads of light. "Centuries waiting for forgiveness that never came. I thought I was cursed to dream forever. Then you appeared, not to save me, but to remind me what it means to want to live." He reached into his chest, then not with his hand, but with will alone. The air shimmered, bending around him as light began to leak from his skin, silver and warm. His essence, the immortal part of him that bound Somnara together. No, I whispered, finding my voice at last, raw and broken. You can't give that to me, you'll die. He smiled again, faintly. I already did. Long ago. The light from his body began to flow into the pool, rippling across the mirrored surface. Images rose from it, scenes from both worlds, my hospital bed, his throne, the field of glass where we'd first met. The two realities overlapped, struggling to coexist. The reflection of my mortal body stirred, its fingers twitched, its chest rose once, shallowly. The machines in the distance beeped faster. I could feel life tugging at me, pulling me upward. Kalen's grip tightened. Go, he said. No. My tears burned against my skin, not without you. If you stay, he whispered, the dream collapses. Everyone here, everything will vanish. And if I go, then you live. And I'll find you, even if I have to follow through death itself. He leaned forward, pressing something cold into my hand. I looked down the ring of moonlight, glowing brighter than ever, pulsing like a living heart. This is my essence now, he said. When you cross, it will anchor both worlds through you. The pool's light grew wilder, swirling into a vortex that reached toward the shattered sky. My body began to lift, drawn toward the mortal reflection. I clung to his arm, desperate, terrified. Kalen, please. He touched my face, his voice trembling. You once gave me a heartbeat when I had none. Now I give you mine. The wind roared. The bridge split open, a seam of light between two existences. I felt my soul stretch, caught between love and life, dream and death. Kalen's body began to dissolve, his edges fading into the glow. His eyes never left mine. I will find you, he said one last time, and then the light swallowed him whole. I screamed his name, reaching into the storm of silver and shadow, but my hand met only cold water. And then, everything went still. The pool went dark. The dream was gone. And I was falling not into sleep this time, but into life. There are moments when the soul remembers what words cannot. The moment Kalen began to fade, something inside me broke not with pain, but with recognition. The kind of knowing that doesn't come from thought or memory, but from the marrow. I understood then what he was doing, what he had chosen. The mirror pool blazed like a star torn in half. Silver light poured from his chest in cascading ribbons, curling through the air, wrapping around my body like threads of warmth. It wasn't just light, it was memory, heartbeat, essence. It was him. Stop, I gasped, reaching for him. Kalen, please don't do this. He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth trembling as his form flickered between man and mist. You once gave me a reason to wake. Let me give you a reason to live. The wind howled through the collapsing sky. The last towers of Somnara crumbled behind him, falling upward into the void. But his wolves emerged from the mists one last time. Dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands. Their forms glimmered like starlight, spectral and proud, circling the mirror pool in silent reverence. And then they bowed, every one of them to their king. Kalen's breath hitched as the light from his body grew brighter, spilling from his skin like water from a broken vessel. His crown, that cold circlet of shadow and silver, cracked down the center. He lifted his hand to it, and for a heartbeat, his eyes met mine. There was never power in this, he said softly. Only burden. Let it end here. The crown dissolved into dust, and in its place, the light flared so brightly it made the stars themselves bow. He stepped toward me, not walking, but drifting, his body half translucent now. Every breath I took felt heavier, slower, like I was inhaling his last moments. The mirror pool rippled beneath our feet, showing flashes of both worlds, his dream kingdom burning away, my mortal body lying pale beneath hospital lights. The two realities overlapped, quivering like reflections in a storm. "I can't live in a world without you," I whispered, tears spilling freely now. "I don't want this life if it costs you yours." He reached up, brushing my tears with fingers already turning to light. "Then live for both of us." The air trembled. The wolves howled in unison, not in mourning, but in tribute. Their voices merged with the wind, with the breaking of the dream itself. Every note sounded like a promise, an oath that would outlive time. And then Kalen pressed his hand against my chest, right above my heart. I felt it immediately, the pulse of something vast, ancient, endless. His essence flowed into me in a torrent of silver fire. It didn't burn, it bloomed. My veins lit from within, my breath expanding with light until it was too much, too big for my fragile body to contain. "Kalen," I cried, "you're killing yourself." "No," he said, his voice barely audible beneath the roar of collapsing eternity. "I'm freeing you." His features softened, no more shadows, no more guilt, just peace. His hair lifted in the current of energy, glowing like white fire. His skin became translucent, his eyes pure light. "Do you remember?" he murmured. "What I told you in the first dream?" I shook my head, sobbing. "That I would find you, in every realm, in every life, even if I had to cross death itself." He smiled then, a smile so heartbreakingly human it shattered me. "You won't have to find me now," he said, "because I'll be part of you." The final pulse came like a thunderclap. His body burst into thousands of fragments, each one a spark of silver that spiraled around me, through me, into me. The wolves howled again, their forms fading with him, returning to the stars that had birthed them. The realm of Samnara, his creation, his curse, his kingdom folded in on itself, collapsing not into darkness, but into dawn. Light flooded everything. The air smelled of rain, the stars melted into Sunday. For the first time since I had arrived, I saw color real, mortal color, blue sky, warm gold, the scent of earth, the sound of a heartbeat. Mine. I gasped, sitting upright. The world around me had changed. The air was sharp and cool. The ceiling above was sterile white. Machines beeped steadily. Tubes snaked around my arm. I was in a hospital bed, my hospital bed. I was awake. For a moment, I couldn't move. My body felt heavy, as if every muscle had forgotten how to belong to me. The nurse's voice in the hallway sounded far away, unreal. My eyes fluttered closed, and I reached instinctively for my chest. That's when I felt it. A warmth, a pulse, just beneath my collarbone. I looked down. A faint silver mark shimmered over my heart, glowing softly in the dim light. Not ink. Not scar. Light. Kalen. Tears blurred my vision again. But this time they weren't from grief. They were from the unbearable tenderness of it, of knowing that his promise had not been broken, only transformed. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking. The light spilled across the horizon like liquid silver, the same light that once filled the mirror pool. And in that fragile, quiet moment between one heartbeat and the next, I heard him. Not a voice, not even a whisper, just the soft echo of his vow, resonating somewhere inside me, where his soul and mine had intertwined. "You are my dawn, Elara, my waking." I pressed a hand over the glowing mark, closed my eyes, and breathed his name like a prayer. Kalen Draven, the Alpha King, who had loved enough to let go. And as the sun climbed over the horizon, I understood. True love isn't about holding on. It's about awakening what's been asleep, even if it costs everything. Even if the dream must die so that one of us can live to remember it. They said I'd been gone for 2 months. 2 months lost to silence, lying between life and death, a place no doctor could name and no prayer could reach. When I finally woke, the world was almost painfully ordinary. White walls, the hum of fluorescent lights, the antiseptic scent that clung to my skin, no matter how many times the nurses wiped me down. To them, it was a miracle. To me, It felt like morning. The doctors called it a coma. A word too neat, too small, for what I remembered for the kingdom of silver mist and the man who'd bled light into my chest. They said I must have been dreaming, that my mind had conjured something beautiful to survive the darkness. They smiled when I told them about Samnara, as though I were describing a fairy tale rather than the place I'd left my heart. I stopped talking about it. It was easier that way. They sent me home after 3 weeks of observation. My body had healed faster than anyone expected. I could walk, though each step felt as though I were learning gravity for the first time. The sunlight outside the hospital was warmer than I remembered, too warm, too real. The air smelled of rain and exhaust and blooming jasmine from the neighbor's garden. It should have felt like home, but everything was missing him. The rhythm of the world was wrong. At night, I'd wake up gasping, reaching for something that wasn't there. A hand, a heartbeat, a voice whispering my name in the dark. I'd look out the window and half expect to see silver clouds drifting across a violet sky. Instead, there were only streetlights, dull and yellow. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and see the faint silver mark over my heart. I kept it hidden beneath my clothes, pressing my fingers against it when the world felt too empty. It pulsed sometimes faintly, like the memory of a touch. No one else noticed it. They noticed other things, though the way I drifted when people spoke to me, the way I stared too long at the moon. My sister said I seemed elsewhere. She was right. I was still halfway inside a dream that refused to let me go. One evening, about 6 weeks after I woke, I went back to my cottage, the one I'd fallen asleep in the night of the storm. It looked exactly the same. The same teacup on the windowsill, the same blanket folded over the chair. But when I stepped inside, the air shifted. It smelled faintly of rain and pine, the way Samnara had. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw him a shadow leaning against the doorway, the suggestion of silver eyes watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. The rational part of me, the one that had learned to nod politely at doctors and pretend to believe their explanations, whispered that it was memory, not magic, hallucination. Grief, but deep down, something inside me stirred that same part of my soul that had once walked barefoot through dreams and called a sleeping king by name. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. I wandered outside and stood barefoot in the damp grass. The moon hung low and full, its light pooling around me like spilled milk. Power. The world was washed in silver again. And for the first time since I'd awakened, the air tasted like him, cold and soft and infinite. I tilted my head back and whispered, "Kaelin." The sound disappeared into the night. No answer came, but the mark over my heart burned faintly, a warmth that spread through my ribs like a heartbeat, not entirely my own. I pressed my palm to it, closing my eyes. "I miss you," I said softly. "I don't know how to live in a world without you." A breeze passed through the trees, not random, not aimless, but rhythmic. It brushed against my skin in time with my pulse. For a second, I thought I could hear the echo of his voice in the wind. "You are my dawn, Alara, my waking." Tears pricked my eyes. The doctors said my dreams were just my brain healing. But how do you explain the way the moonlight itself seems to hum when I speak his name? Power. How do you explain a world that feels hollow when it used to be full of music? I went back inside and sat by the window, pulling my knees to my chest. The clock ticked quietly. Midnight came and went. The world stayed still. And then faintly, from somewhere far beyond the hills, I heard it. A howl. Low and mournful at first, rising into something wild and familiar. It wasn't the sound of any wolf I'd ever heard. It carried through the air like a pulse, steady and alive, vibrating in the hollow of my chest. My heart stumbled, then matched it beat for beat. The mark over my heart flared silver, brighter than it had ever been. The room around me shimmered faintly, as if caught between two worlds, one waking, one dreaming. I stood, trembling. The howl came again, closer this time, threaded with something more than instinct, recognition. It was his voice, carried through distance and death and memory, a sound that wasn't supposed to exist in this world. "Kaylin," I whispered into the night. The wind answered, with another echo, soft, deliberate, alive. My pulse raced, the mark burned. Somewhere between the stars and the silver moon, the impossible seemed to stir. And for the first time since I'd opened my eyes in this too real world, I dared to believe that the Alpha King who had loved me across dreams might not be gone after all. Because the howl that filled the night wasn't just sound, it was a heartbeat. And it was calling mine. The howl came again. It cut through the night like a blade, low, resonant, and impossibly alive. It wasn't just a sound, it was a summons. My heart stuttered in recognition long before my mind caught up. Kaylin. I didn't think. I just moved. The grass was slick with dew as I crossed the meadow behind my cottage, barefoot and trembling. The moon hung heavy above me, casting silver across the world, a world that suddenly didn't feel so ordinary anymore. Every step drew me deeper into the dark, and yet I wasn't afraid. The mark over my heart pulsed faintly, guiding me, whispering a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat I'd known in another life. Branches brushed against my arms as I entered the forest. The night was alive here, every rustle, every whisper of wind seemed to breathe. Somewhere, beyond the trees, the howl had quieted into something softer. A voice. Elara. I froze. My name, spoken in the exact tone I remembered, low, rough, threaded with awe. But it couldn't be. He was gone. He'd given himself to light, to death, to everything that wasn't this mortal world. And yet the sound of his voice rippled through me, shaking loose every piece of grief I'd buried. Kaylin? My own voice cracked, fragile as frost. No answer. Only the wind moving through the pines, carrying that same scent of rain and night that had always clung to him. I kept walking. The forest opened into a clearing, the kind that shouldn't exist in ordinary woods. The moonlight gathered there, thick and luminous, spilling across the ground in silvery pools. At the center of it stood a man. He was barefoot, his clothes torn as if he'd wandered far. His hair was dark, damp with mist, and his skin glowed faintly in the moonlight. But it was his eyes that stole my breath. Gray, the same storm gray I had once stared into across a kingdom of dreams. He looked at me like a man seeing sunlight for the first time. Elara, he said again, uncertain this time, as though testing the shape of my name on his tongue. I took a step forward. My throat ached. Do you know me? He frowned, his gaze unfocused, as though searching for something that refused to come. I don't know, he said finally. His voice trembled, soft and raw. I don't remember anything. But when I saw you... He pressed a hand to his chest, eyes wide with confusion. It felt like I'd been waiting for you forever. The world tilted. I should have been afraid some stranger, barefoot in the woods, whispering my name with impossible tenderness. But fear never came. Only the pull. The same pull that had drawn me to the throne room in Samnara. The same invisible thread that had bound our souls across dream and death. He stumbled closer, and moonlight caught on something at his wrist. A faint, silvery scar, perfectly circular, like a mark left by a vanished crown. My breath caught. Kaylin, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. It's you. He hesitated. That name. His brows furrowed, his hand trembling slightly. Why does it feel like I should know it? Because it was yours, I said softly. You were the Alpha King. He laughed, not mockery, but disbelief. A king? He looked down at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. I can barely remember my own face. You don't have to remember, I said, stepping closer. I do. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. The air shimmered faintly, as though holding its breath. The silver mark over my heart began to throb, warm beneath my skin. He saw it, then the faint glow spilling through the fabric of my blouse. What is that? He asked, voice hushed. Yours, I whispered. He didn't understand, not yet, but his hand lifted hesitant, reverent, and before I could stop him, he reached out. His fingers brushed the spot over my heart where the mark lived. The instant he touched me, the forest erupted in light. It wasn't just illumination, it was recognition. The silver from my mark flared, mirrored by a glow blooming beneath the scar on his wrist. The two lights reached for each other, like old lovers finding their way home. He gasped, stumbling back, clutching his arm. I fell to my knees, breathless, my chest burning with warmth so fierce it was almost unbearable. The air shimmered with echoes, faint visions flickering like fireflies. His face in the mirror pool, the wolves bowing, the moment his essence had poured into me. He saw them too. I could tell by the way his expression shifted from confusion to awe to something deeper, something older. What is this? He whispered. Who are you to me? I swallowed hard, tears spilling freely now. I'm the reason you woke. He looked at me as though he were seeing beyond skin and bone, into the place where memory becomes soul. His lips parted, a tremor passing through him. I don't understand, but I feel like I've known you forever. The light between us pulsed again once, twice in perfect rhythm with our hearts. The connection that had once belonged to the dream now lived in flesh. The forest began to darken, shadows curling at the edges of the clearing. The light on his wrist flared again, brighter, wild, as if the bond itself was too strong for the mortal world to contain. He took a shaky step forward. Alara, what's happening? I don't know, I whispered. But I did. The dream was coming back, through him. The silver light spread outward, filling the clearing, reflecting off the trees, until everything shimmered. The air was thick with the scent of moonlight and memory. Kaylin's hand found mine again steady, warm, real. Our joined touch blazed brighter than the moon above. And then, somewhere deep within the glow, I heard the faint echo of a wolf's howl, the sound of Samnara's soul stirring awake. Kaylin flinched, his eyes flashing silver for a heartbeat. Alara, he breathed, what have you brought back with me? The light flared one last time, and the forest vanished into white. There are mornings that feel like memory, not of something that was, but of something that still is, somewhere just beyond sight. The forest hadn't been the same since that night. The silver light that had bound Kaylin and me had faded from the air, but it lingered beneath the skin of the world in the hush before dawn, in the way the mist clung to the trees, in the faint hum I could still feel beneath my ribs. Samnara hadn't died. It had shifted. It no longer lived behind my eyelids, or in the fragile borders of sleep. It lived through us. Through the way his touch felt too familiar for strangers. Through the way my heart still glowed when he was near. Through the soft gleam of silver that would catch in his eyes every time the light hit just right. The doctors had been wrong. Dreams don't end when you wake. They simply change their shape. That morning, Kaylin asked me to walk with him to the sea cliffs. He didn't remember everything, not fully, but flashes came to him in fragments. A hall of glass, wolves kneeling in mist, a crown made of moonlight. He'd wake in the middle of the night sometimes, gasping, whispering my name like a plea. I would hold him, and though he didn't know why, he would always say, I found you again. So when he said he wanted to see the dawn, I understood. There was something he needed to face even if he didn't yet know what it was. The air was cool as we climbed. The sea stretched below us, dark and endless, the waves rolling like distant memories. The horizon glowed faintly with the first light of morning. Kaylin walked ahead of me, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat. He was dressed like any other man now, no crown, no armor, no title. But when the wind caught his hair and the sun touched his face, I saw the king in him still, not the ruler of a realm, but of his own reborn soul. When we reached the top, he stopped, staring out over the sea. I could feel the veil even before I saw it, the air shimmering faintly, like heat over water. It was thin here, the line between worlds. You feel it too, don't you? I whispered. He nodded slowly. Like something breathing, he said. Something waiting. I stepped beside him. It's Somnara, I murmured. What's left of it? He glanced at me, eyes storm gray, searching. I thought it was gone. It isn't gone, I said softly. It's inside us now. You rebuilt it not with power, but with love. You gave me your essence, Kaylin. The dream didn't die. It simply followed. He looked down at his hands, turning them over as though he could still see the faint glow of the realm in his palms. I still don't understand why I came back, he said quietly. Why I'm here, like this. I smiled faintly. Because you weren't supposed to dream forever. You were supposed to live. The wind whipped my hair across my face. He reached out, brushing it back with a tenderness that made my throat ache. His hand lingered, his fingers tracing the place where the silver mark still glowed faintly through my blouse. Every time I see that, he said softly, I remember light, wolves, a crown. His voice broke a little. And you, always you. Tears blurred my vision. You saved me, I whispered. You gave up everything to bring me back. He shook his head slowly, a smile ghosting across his lips. No, you were the one who woke me. The words caught in the air between us. For a heartbeat, the veil shimmered brighter, silver threads twisting in the dawn light. I could almost see the outlines of Somnara, its towers, its fields of glass, the faint silhouettes of wolves watching us from beyond the mist. The world was breathing again. Through us, Kaylin turned toward me fully. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain and something unearthly, the same scent that had followed him in the dream. His gaze was steady now, sure, as though something in him had finally remembered how to exist in both worlds at once. Elara, he said quietly. I met his eyes, and the moment stretched, endless. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. The veil shimmered brighter behind him, like the moon bending toward the Sunday. You were never the dream, he said, voice trembling with truth. You were the reason I woke. Something inside me broke, not with pain, but release. The first rays of dawn spilled over the horizon, flooding the cliffs with gold and silver. The light reflected in his eyes and in mine. For an instant, the world seemed doubled again. 2 skies, 2 seas, 2 souls, 1 heartbeat. The mortal and the eternal, walking the same line. He reached for my hand. The silver scar on his wrist glowed faintly, answering the light over my heart. The bond pulsed once, steady and calm. Not a curse anymore, not a tether, just a promise. We stood there until the sun was high enough to dissolve the mist. The veil shimmered one last time, then faded, leaving only the sea and the sound of waves and the warmth of his hand in mine. For the first time, I didn't feel torn between worlds. I didn't feel like I'd lost anything, power. Because both the dream and the dawn were ours now. The Alpha King and the mortal. The dreamer and the awakened. Walking together through a world reborn, one made not of sleep or power, but of love, that refused to end, even when the dream did. And as the light brightened, silver flickered in both our eyes, proof that some dreams, once awakened, never die,